2 p.m. The Lunchroom. Informative, enlightening, provocative, engaging. The Lunchroom on RCI. Food for thought. The station that gives you, more lunch.
Pleasant good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. And it's Thursday, the 11th of September, 2024. Sorry about that. It's the 12th of September, 2024. And this is program number 1247. I'm your host, Alex George Jr. And in addition to radio, you can, of course, get us at 101.1 FM radio. We are also streaming live on Facebook. Just search for the official page of Radio Caribbean International. And of course, please be sure to like and share that link as well with your friends and family. And you can always go back on to our website to get our older shows, and that's in MP3 format. So if you ever miss us, you can also get those recordings downloadable as well. The number to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, it is 4523046. That's our direct line number again, 4523046, as well as our WhatsApp number, 724-0008. Some birthday greetings for today. First, we want to send out some greetings to Miss Giselle Monrose. Happy birthday to you, Giselle. And we do hope that you're having an enjoyable birthday celebration. Also want to send out birthday greetings to Francilia Austin. Happy birthday to you. And we're hoping that you're having a splendid and happy birthday. And also to Mr. Otis F's. Happy birthday to you, sir. And we do hope that you're having a grand birthday as well. Bit of history for today. Back in the year 1624, the first submarine was publicly tested in London on the River Thames for the king of that time, James I. 1758, French astronomer Charles Messier mistakenly identified the Crab Nebula and began his Messier catalog. 1909 saw the world's first patent for synthetic rubber being granted to German chemist Fritz Hoffmann. 1940, on this day, 14s followed their dog down a hole near Lascaux in France and discovered 17,000-year-old drawings, which are now known as the Lascaux cave paintings. In the year 1958, in the United States, the Supreme Court ordered the all-white Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, to integrate. 1959, on this day, Luna 2 was launched by the Soviet Union and became the first spacecraft to impact the moon. And in 1981, for those of you who love your cartoons, the animated cartoon series The Smurfs by Hanna-Barbera was first broadcast in North America. We now move on to our dish of the day. The daily dish is brought to you with the kind compliments of our good friends at Tiles Plus.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+, need all kind of tiles. Come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gasware and vanity. Books, doors, you'll see. Come down to my nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses Grizzly Lakes, and Flag Street in Beaufort. Telephone number 453-7939.
Serving now, the Daily Dish.
And welcome back to our program here at the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. Apologies that we weren't able to come on air yesterday. Of course, yesterday was September the 11th, the anniversary of that very infamous attack by Al-Qaeda on the United States, terrorist attacks through the use of plane hijackings involving a number of planes being hit into the World Trade Center in downtown Manhattan in the first instance, and then later on, another into the Pentagon, another also headed, I think, for another location in Washington and in Washington D.C. and being brought down by apparently by the individuals on board that other plane in the fields of Shanksville, Pennsylvania. At the end of it all, nearly 3,000 individuals lost their lives in that attack. And certainly it went and reverberated far beyond that. It was, of course, the largest known terrorist attack in the United States of America, and certainly led to the destruction of iconic structures like the Twin Towers, which were really, the headline of the Manhattan skyline, and still, of course, the whole still being there, the whole that these two buildings formed, now part of a memorial to the many those who lost their lives in that devastation. Primarily, United States citizens, nearly 2,700 of them lost their lives, but they were people from all over the world, and including, I believe, one St. Lucian by the name of Mr. Felix Bobby Calix, who was in fact working for an air conditioning company during that time. So certainly, we do have to remember how this has impacted our world. Because in terms of air travel, certainly in terms of security, the impact that it has had in the Middle East and beyond, of course, into Afghanistan and Central Asia, and the issues there with the Al Qaeda and the Taliban has led to a significant period of warfare impacting tens of thousands of people, no doubt, over the many years that we've seen this war on terror. And so certainly we just wanted to make note of yesterday in that regard. Now, unfortunately, in fact, earlier on in our history of the day, we noted about 4 teenage boys going down into a hole and discovering a cave with paintings. And the reality is that boys tend to be very adventurous. They tend to want to go out and explore and to discover and to figure out the world and what have you. And that, of course, is very good. But unfortunately, sometimes it can go pretty wrong. And unfortunately for the Cicero community, they have been left in mourning as a result of the loss of a life of a very young boy, 7 years old, the late Nikaya Polio is his name. And very, very unfortunate circumstances there, where he, in fact, appears to have ended up drowning. Those who know that area would appreciate, especially beyond the community of Monkey Town, is in fact a what is effectively a significant wetland area, that of the cul-de-sac valley in that region there. And there are many ponds and areas where you may not even realize that there is in fact water, areas that may be waterlogged and what have you. And it is certainly, um, you know, unfortunate what has occurred in that regard with respect to the loss of this young life. And of course, the reminder, the need for seeing how we can ensure a lot more of the good oversight of children, even at that age, who can end up, you know, wanting to go exploring, but then you never know what can end up happening in terms of uh, being lost and in terms of, in fact, getting injured. So we certainly want to extend our condolences to that family. And of course, a very inconsolable father and his mother who now have to be grasping, dealing with this current situation. So certainly wanted to make note of that. Now, right now, the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, of course, is the entity responsible for managing the central banking operations of the region, the sub-region, setting out our monetary policy as a collective group of islands. And this, of course, is a tradition that we've had for quite some time, perhaps even into, well, in fact, it does date into the colonial period. And then, of course, beyond into independence, we have, in fact, maintained this common currency union, which has certainly dealt us pretty well over the years. And certainly with respect to uh, managing the impacts of things like inflation. One can say the fact that we, in fact, have had a pretty much fixed currency rate that has, in fact, allowed us to fare pretty well. Other countries have not done so in the Caribbean region, and we can think of many countries that have ended up in situations of tremendous devaluation of their currencies, whether it may be Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago in particular. They have all faced devaluations, and those have had some pretty dire impacts in terms of cost of living, as the case may be. Of course, on the corollary to that is that some say that devaluation is not always bad, especially if you are a country that is producing quite a bit and you have exports, and those exports can be more competitive in other markets if, in fact, you have a lower currency. That's one school of thought. And that's often what is used as a justification for lowering or devaluing of currencies. But in our case, of course, a lot of what we consume is coming out of the United States of America. Uh, we've got a very large import bill for pretty much everything that we currently consume. And you're also, of course, seeing more and more a stronger dependence on our even tourism coming out of the United States of America, against which we have, in fact, pegged our currency. Well, the ECCB is also responsible for the oversight of our banking and financial sector in the region. And the Basse based organization on an annual basis will, in fact, give updates as to where the economy is at across the region. And of course, will give some indication as to really, how things are faring. Because, of course, on the financial side, the fiscal policy does have implications for the monetary policy and the strength of the currency union. And St. Lucia happens to be the largest uh, player within that currency union. In fact, if one were to compare, well, St. Lucia is about a quarter of the entire economy of the Eastern Caribbean. And just in perspective, again, when you compare, let's say, with Dominica, of course, a much smaller population there, the St. Lucian economy is in the region of about 4 times the size of the Dominica economy. So as it is right now, in terms of the size and scale of the these various island economies. St. Lucia makes up about a quarter, as I said, 26.5% of the ECCU's GDP. And that is followed by Antigua and Barbuda, which is about 22%, followed by Grenada, which is about 14%, then St. Kitts with 11, sorry, with then St. Vincent and the Grenadines with 11.6, and St. Kitts and Nevis with 11.5. They're pretty much almost the same in terms of size, albeit the St. Kitts population is roughly about half that of the Vincentian population. And then, as I mentioned, the smaller economies, Dominica 7.1%, and Anguilla with 5.8%. And in fact, Montserrat, which we note, of course, has gone through a difficult time since the 1990s, and that devastating volcanic eruption of the Soufrière Hills, which really changed the landscape of Montserrat and caused for a significant amount of migration, particularly to the United Kingdom. And those individuals have invariably never come back for the main. It makes up just about 1% of the overall economy of the Eastern Caribbean. So certainly St. Lucia is very vital towards the strength of the Eastern Caribbean and its survival in its monetary policy. And so, of course, within that context, economic growth in St. Lucia is certainly very, very important. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and particularly through its governor, Mr. Timothy Antoine, they do these tours every year, as I mentioned. And they also, albeit are responsible for, yes, monetary policy, they do provide guidance and recommendations as to how they see things moving forward for the island economies, which of course gives good insight and independent insight into how things are right now in terms of the scoping of the environment, but also what we should be pushing towards. And in fact, their release for their country outreach this year is in fact entitled The Big Push, Pursuing Bold Actions to Transform St. Lucia's Economies. And the key messages are really effectively that global growth, global activity is currently projected to remain on a positive track for the year, and somewhere around 3.2% due to lower inflation and further supported by the resurgence of global trade. However, recent developments in the Middle East could pose a threat to growth prospects. They've in fact also indicated that global developments present opportunities for the continued recovery of the tourism industry and sectors such as manufacturing and agriculture in St. Lucia. They've also pointed out St. Lucia's economy is expected to remain on an expansionary path for the next couple of years between 2024 to 2026, fueled by a rebound in the tourism industry and investments in public and private infrastructure. But they are pointing out that, of course, notwithstanding all of that, prudent public fiscal management, addressing the crime surge, and building resilience to climatic shocks are essential for long-term growth and sustainability. And while the financial sector is stable, several key pieces of legislation remain pending, and the enactment of those would further strengthen the financial system. In fact, one of those, of course, pieces of legislation just this week went into Parliament and was debated and I believe passed, albeit perhaps with a few amendments, the matter of the supervision and oversight of the cooperative sector. And of course, that sector being, from a financial perspective, primarily the credit unions which of course have taken up an even larger space within St. Lucia and the region's economic, financial management and saving system and investment system. Now, the ideal and the challenge being put forward by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank is really about asking how this country, St. Lucia, can potentially double the size of its economy over the next 10 years. So, effectively, taking it from an economy with about the size of about $5.7 billion to taking it to somewhere in the region of about 11.5 billion dollars over the next 10 years by 2033. And of course, we've heard about these ambitions in the past, and I think perhaps all countries are very much keen to see how they can, in fact, get into this sort of growth trajectory. It is certainly what China was able to achieve decade after decade. And to grow an economy at that rate, it means that you've got to be somewhere about, if you want to double the economy every 10 years, it means that your annual growth has to be at around 8% per annum to be able to achieve just that. So, certainly very ambitious because we're not near that point with respect to growth to be able to say that we can be growing at that rate. And one of the areas that certainly has been emphasized by the central bank is the need for reforms and the impact that those reforms can actually have can be beneficial. And so, of course, across the currency union, they've done analyses to see what could be the potential impact in terms of an increase in the growth rate if there are certain reforms that are taken on. So, in the case of St. Lucia, based on the proposed reforms that they're saying that could be done, it could result in St. Lucia growing at 2% more, 2 percentage points, I should say, more than what it is projected to actually grow right now. So, some of the major contributors that are being pointed to in terms of shifting that growth rate, the number one contributor could be greater human capital development, as well as improving the business climate, something that we've heard about quite a lot in terms of doing business in St. Lucia and how that can improve. And the matter of crime as well can potentially, lessening crime, that is, can potentially, in fact, cause for a greater interest in the island and by way of persons looking more favorably on the island as a place to invest. And of course, could potentially even lead to savings, which could then allow for a lot more resources to be put into other areas. And a good example of that is a matter which had been pointed out, I think, just this week by the Prime Minister during his pre-cabinet press briefing, the real cost of crime on our healthcare system is one of those very things that is in fact costing quite a lot. Every time there's a shooting, every time somebody is getting injured seriously, it therefore means that they quite likely have to be kept in hospital. There's a cost involved in that. There's a cost to doing the surgeries. I mean, all the materials and the equipment and the diagnostics and the anesthetics and all of that has to go into keeping that individual alive and getting them well again, right? Just imagine that is happening every single time, and then those costs certainly can pile up very very quickly. And if we're now, for instance, talking about, well, in the instance of individuals who sometimes, yes, they've gone into hospital and they've actually died. Unfortunately, we've had some of these situations, but we're looking at what, 60 homicides to date at this point. And you can well imagine that there perhaps are many other instances where people are injured due to choppings, stabbings, shootings, and as it appears, sometimes these individuals are facing those things more than once in a year or over a period of time. So the impact is very, very real in terms of the costs that crime is having on healthcare, but also the costs, if you think of it from the perspective of less investment, people are going to be less interested in investing as a result of that. They think that the island may not be a good place for investment. And of course, the other one, which was pointed out that could potentially be pretty big, is deepening trade integration across the subregion and the region. And of course, that has been a matter that we've been speaking about continuously for quite some time, in particular, the issue of travel, including air travel, but not solely air travel, the challenges with moving goods between islands, another certainly impediment to unleashing greater growth. So certainly the ECCB has made a number of recommendations in terms of what is possible in terms of economic growth. But we're going to have to take that, of course, perhaps on the other side of our weather report, because we're actually due to take that in. So we'll wrap up here. That'll be our dish of the day. And when we come back, we'll take in that weather report.
This has been The Daily Dish.
One tiles for your home, I see. Bathroom, kitchen, pantry. Need tiles for your balcony. Come down to Tiles Plus, satisfaction guarantee. Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus, Tiles Plus. Big tiles with unbeatable cost. Customer service, A+. Need all kind of tiles. Come down to Tiles Plus. We also got gasway and vanity. Books, doors, you'll see. Come down to my nobody. We got the best tiles on island. Trust me. We are located Land Street in Castries, Bosses Juguruzi Lanes, and Flag Street in Viewfort. Telephone number 453-7939.
Island style, yeah. We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. We'll have to make the right choice. Island style, whoa. We got the time that will make you happy. Island style, oh yeah. We make your dream come alive in Island style.
We have tiles and king sets, pieces and ground. Everything you need is on the house out. For the best price and the latest style. Take a little drive down to Island Style Car.
We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, quality rice, service choice. It's all an Island Style.
Visit us at our showrooms in Bellarosa, Rodney Bay, on the John Compton Highway, Castries, and behind Ruby's Gas Station on the Library Viewfort Highway. So call us on 450-452 or 453-TILE. Island Style, Tile and Bath. When you think tile, think Island Style.
This is Radio Caribbean International. It's now time for the weather news.
And that's of course, little 1.1. It's now time for your weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talent Bar. The forecast for St. Lucia Valley for the next 24 hours. Winds will be blowing from between the east, southeast, and southeast near 14 miles per hour or 22 kilometers per hour, becoming lighter at times. The weather partly cloudy, skies becoming cloudy at times with a few scattered showers and a chance of isolated thunderstorms. The forecast for the Les Antilles, partly cloudy to cloudy at times with widely scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms. And the tropical weather outlook, the atmosphere over our region remains sufficiently moist and unstable to cause some scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms over our islands during the next 24 hours. Two areas of low pressure located a few hundred miles east of the Leeward Islands and over the western tropical Atlantic continues to drift slowly westward and northwestward, respectively. These systems have a low chance of tropical cyclone development during the next 7 days. Also, at 11 a.m. today, Tropical Depression 7 was located near latitude 17.8 north and longitude 24.6 west. The depression is moving towards the west-northwest near 17 miles per hour or 28 kilometers per hour. Maximum sustained winds are near 45 miles per hour or 55 kilometers per hour with higher gusts. The depression could become a tropical storm later today or tonight and pose no threat to our region at this time. And this was the weather report as of 12 noon today, presented by Island Style Talent Bath.
This has been RCI's Weather News. For more information, call the Weather Hotline at 454-3452. RCI 101 number 1.
Island style. Yeah. We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. We'll have to make the right choice. Island style. Whoa. We got the time that will make you happy. Island style. Oh yeah. We make your dream come alive. In Island style.
We have tiles and thin sets, pieces and ground. Everything you need is on the house out. For the best price and the latest style. Take a little drive down to Island Style Car.
We got the time to make you go. We got the time to make you say, yeah. Quality, price, service, choice. It's all an Island Style.
Visit us at our showrooms in Belarus, Rodney Bay, on the John Compton Highway, Cass Street, and behind Ruby's Gas Station on the Library Viewfort Highway. So call us on 450-452 or 453-TILE. Island Style, Tile and Bath. When you think tile, think Island Style.
And welcome back to our program here at the Lunchroom on Radio Caribbean International. Hope you're having a very blessed day. Of course, there is the continuation of CPL cricket tonight at the Darren Sammy Cricket Ground. And the match on, of course, will be involving the St. Lucia Kings and the Patriots out of St. Kitts. And that's going to be happening from 7 o'clock tonight. So certainly something to take in. And hopefully the weather will stay pretty nice for that. Now, we were just discussing the outlook coming from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. They've been meeting with a number of different players and partners and stakeholders across the island. Today they met with the media earlier on. But of course, they've also been interacting with the Chamber of Commerce and government and opposition to really get present their thoughts and their findings, but of course as well to be able to get feedback from these stakeholders and institutions. Of course, the number to call in to tell us what's on your plate today, it is 452-3046. Again, 452-3046. And you can also message in on our WhatsApp. That is 724-0008. Now, as I mentioned, of course, St. Lucia is the largest economy within the Eastern Caribbean at the moment. And the size of the Eastern Caribbean economy is somewhere around 18.3 billion EC dollars. And of that amount, St. Lucia is about 5.7 billion dollars. And the big challenge is, how do you grow your economy? Because the principle is that economic growth will then result in greater income, greater wealth, wealth accumulation for the country as a whole. And so, of course, it has been certainly the dominant object of economic policy for quite some time, that you have to have economic growth. Of course, there are a number of things that are challenging those growth prospects. And I mean, the list is not exhaustive, but certainly things like climate change being a major one, and the impact that we're seeing on the climate. Once you've got a major event, tropical storm, a hurricane, could potentially cost billions of dollars in terms of damage and rebuilding. And of course, rebuilding is sometimes, is happening at a greater cost today, because you're doing something at replacement costs, and the replacement costs are higher as a result of inflation. And so maybe even what how you would design today would be different. So the need for climate resilience remains a big issue, but it's not just about these immediate shocks of these hurricanes and storms, but of course, even issues like drought. And we've seen how that has been an issue of late. Only recently, we've gotten off that water emergency. And of course, the need there again, the greater cost to have resilience, more water storage being necessary, being able to protect your water catchments, all of these issues um, are, of course, being things that we've been dealing with for a very long time, but they've been exacerbated by climate change and the risks that we are facing in terms of that. Of course, the geopolitical situation is always a major um, implicator in a lot of things, and we've seen how, from time and time again, whether it might be the price of oil, which might very well be impacted by conflict in the Middle East or in some other part of the world. There could be conflict in Nigeria, and you might see an impact on the price of oil, and or in Venezuela, and you can see an impact there. So certainly, the geopolitics does have some very dire consequences because of the smallness of our economies and our dependence on trade and foreign. Our exposure to these implications are quite real. Of course, internally, the issue of crime, as we mentioned, is a certainly a major one, and we've seen across the region, including the sub-region, this surge in particular of gun violence being of great concern. And albeit it would appear that the overall crime burden is actually reducing, but the very, very sensitive crimes, the ones that are taking away lives, which of course also have a significant impact on our economy as well, because each life lost means that you're losing out on the productive capacity of an individual. And over a lifetime, that actually adds up when one looks at what could potentially have been a citizen making a contribution, hopefully. Uh, when that individual's life has been taken away, the impacts are very real. So the ECCB has been flagging many of these issues. Of course, debt has been another major one, which we've heard about so many times during the past decades, and how to deal with debt, and the fact that our islands have largely not been able to raise sufficient revenue to be able to actually support the amount of spending that is going on. And so that certainly remains a major concern. Let's go to the phone lines at this time. Good afternoon and welcome to the lunchroom. What's on your plate today? Hello? Hello, caller? Caller, are you there? Caller, are you there?
Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, caller.
Phones have not been working from last week,
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Even though you call, it just would not go through.
Okay.
That's all.
Thanks for letting us know.
Maybe, and it's not only your phone, lots of other telephones, like when you call certain business places and things, it's not going through. It's static and lots. I don't know if it's water is flowing through flow lines.
Caller, you always have some jokes to give, right? But I do know that they've been experiencing some difficulties. I mean, there was a significant, it would appear, network-wide, almost like a blackout of telecommunication services over the weekend. And I think, again, just yesterday, there were some issues with the mobile service as well. So, I mean, given the fact that I think a lot of these networks now, of course, are dependent on internet connections. Yeah.
But even right now, as you're talking, it's sounding static.
Yes, I did hear a little bit of static earlier on.
It has been happening to most places when you call it static. But what I was saying, I listened to the new police commissioner, the acting police commissioner.
Yes, Mr. Verngard.
Asking to put more more men on the boots is just that the effectiveness of how the police officers are deployed.
Mm.
And that is what I think he's going to use a lot of how he deployed his prisoners. You may have a lot of boots on the ground, but yet nothing may be happening.
Mm-hmm.
And then people are saying we need a lot more police, we need a lot of police. True, we have a lot of people, but if he says that, I suppose he would know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact current staffing of the Royal Seneca Police Force. I'll try to get a figure. But then, of course, you see the challenge with that figure is that it may sound large. And I think it used to be about 1,200, 1,300 or thereabouts. But then that has to be probably, you could effectively say split in four because you're talking about shifts. And of course, there may be sometimes when you have more shifts, more persons on shift than others. But then, and then you see again, and as you said, the time of deployment is the other issue. A lot of people may want to work at a certain time. They may not want to work the
It's
night
not possible
shifts.
for me here to hear all what you're saying on the phone.
Sorry? Are you not hearing us?
Yeah, the phone is sounding static and very bad. Like you're not really getting a proper connection. Like you're not really hearing very clearly what is being said to you through the phone.
Oh, I'm hearing you
Yeah.
clearly though. Perfectly fine. So it's I'm not sure why that is happening.
Yes, it's been happening, and I don't want to put on my device because it would disturb the call. So I
Right.
am not hearing clearly what you're saying, and then I already wanted to hear what you were saying and what to talk about, all of this crime situation, what he has to see, and how that is going to work out to curb the crime and all of the things that are taking place. Because I just feel now that it's getting a little too out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
Too many guys seems to feel that regardless of whether you have a police force, regardless of what they're going to do, what they're going to do when they want, what time, and just take lives away without nothing being done. So I'm hoping that with that strategy put, it will really, really make a difference. Because it cannot go on. Guys cannot be just driving by and shooting and doing what they want, without no care,
Right.
concern that they may be caught or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, that is the part of the challenge too, that a lot of people may feel that they can get away with crime because, our borders are so porous, they leave so quickly out of the island. You commit a crime and then you hear that they're in St. Vincent or Martinique or elsewhere. That's one of the big challenges. And so the cooperation across the region is pretty important. That regional approach towards dealing with tracking of criminals is very, very necessary. But yes, in terms of
I'm not here anymore.
okay, well, sorry about that, caller. But is that the end of your contribution, or you wanted to say anything else?
I wanted this, but I wouldn't be able to hear their response. That's the thing.
Ah, well, I know we probably.
And it's not, as I say, it's not only your radio station.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems up to this morning and the station, they were having the same problem. You cannot get, and even when you get to the person, not actually hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what seems to be the problem in some of those phone lines.
Well, I'm very, very sorry about that, caller. Very, very sorry. Hope you can. Hopefully by tomorrow, I'm not sure if things will improve with the network in that regard. So have a good one.
I will take it.
Take care. Of course, the matter of police and how many police are appropriate in terms of being on the ground, in terms of numbers. That's traditionally always been a pretty big one. And how would you measure that too? Well, interestingly enough, I mean, again, lots of this data is online, and from a comparative perspective, of course, it's hard to compare because country sizes are so different and how people police are so different. But if we just look at it on a per capita basis, and we give the example of England and Wales, which is, and this is what we have the data for, 135,000 police officers across England and Wales. And that works out to be 227 officers per 100,000. So just like how we would measure homicides per 100,000, You could also measure, in a similar way, of course, number of police officers per 100,000. That's one of the rates that's used. And so 227 per 100,000. A country like Singapore, with a population of over 5 million people, has about 12,000 police officers, which puts the rate at 200 per 100,000. Norway, which is a country which has one of the lowest rates of crime in the world, has about 10,000 police officers, a similar population to Singapore. And it works out to be about 189 police officers per 100,000. Canada, similar situation there, about 67,000 police officers and about 184 um, police officers per 100,000. Now, Denmark, some of these countries have very, very low, relatively low rates, one can say, in terms of the number of police officers they have based on the size of their population. The United States, if you want to use that as a potential market, there are about 1.23 million police officers in the United States and this is using 2019 figures here, and that works out to be 428 officers per 100,000. So, of course, you may be asking, well, where does St. Lucia fit into this breakdown that is being provided? And, well, actually, according to the data, and this is data from 2012, which is pretty dated, giving the police force, it gives the size of the police force in St. Lucia 947. And I do believe that that number is much, much larger now, albeit, of course, the population has shifted a little bit. But if you're even using that as a potential marker, it gave us a rate of 509 police officers per 100,000 of the population, which actually is putting us pretty high up in the rankings, somewhere about 39th highest rate in the world. There are some, of course, other countries. Many of them are very small countries like ourselves, which have very similar rates. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is a little higher than us. They have 628 per 100,000 of their population, which is just about 100,000 in any case. Antigua and Barbuda, 695 per 100,000. Dominica, 710 per 100,000. The BVI, 796. Grenada, even higher, actually 13th highest in the world, 871 per 100,000. Big question is, and St. Kitts, I should mention, St. Kitts and Nevis, 9th highest in the world with 974 police officers per 100,000. I mean, of course, their population is not even 100,000, so they actually have about 450 police officers over there. And in fact, most of the countries that are in that top bracket are very small. Like the highest in the world is the Vatican, for example, which has apparently 130 police officers, and other countries like Monaco and Montserrat and Brunei, very, very tiny countries for the most part, finding themselves at the top of that list. So is there really an exact number that one should say is the optimum? I think it has a lot to do with the reality on the ground in terms of dealing with the crime burden and as well ensuring that we get more effectiveness from police officers and ensuring that so it may very well be that the issue of resources could be part of that challenge. And so a lot of other metrics will have to now come in to have a look and seeing, well, how many police vehicles are there, based on the amount of area that they have to cover and the size of the force. That might be a very interesting one to look at. The other skills and other resources that are becoming far more critical in crime fighting, that of CCTV, for example, being a major one. And what you would perhaps will have to actually see is how, and exactly as the caller was pointing out, Mr. God was alluding to, it's how those resources are deployed and how they are utilized, how they are apportioned. Um, because if you're having more CCTV, one can say yes, you have a lot of the use of artificial intelligence and software to monitor the CCTV, but that's another thing that you've got to also get right. You've got to also ensure that you have enough capacity to um, handle the specialized monitoring and surveillance that comes with that. So that's part of the need there. One could perhaps look at the matter of the traffic department and the management of our transport space becoming a lot more critical as we've got far more vehicles on the road compared to many more years ago. We're seeing the impacts of road rage. We're seeing reckless driving. We're seeing a lot more of that going on. People are traveling more. And so that really is perhaps one of the areas which needs to be beefed up and strengthened. We've heard of, maybe especially around areas where have very high volumes of traffic on a regular basis. Do we need a highway patrol? Perhaps, those are some of the things that certainly um, one may think the Royal St. Lucia Police Force would have to consider. And then, of course, the challenge with the police force, too, remember, as we said, is the burden of dealing with all of these crimes is very real because if 60 homicides on island. Last year we saw over 70. Year before that was similar sort of situations. We're dealing with, and these are just the homicides. These are just the very, very serious ones. And then you then have to ask, well, how many officers do we actually have who are dedicated towards investigations? So it's a heavy burden that that the police are under, especially with so much crime and being present. So uh, yes, maybe the numbers will have to go up before they actually start potentially having to go back down. That might have to be one issue, and of course, dealing with the issue of competitiveness. Like some fields, you are seeing that some police officers may figure that they have a better opportunity working outside of St. Lucia, and they may not stay within the force for um, the full length of time that you may think that you're actually making that investment from. So we definitely have to look at a lot of these issues, how to deal with attrition in the police force, how to retain your human resources a lot more within that context. So there are definitely quite a lot of issues, and it's good to hear that there is a plan afoot to begin addressing many of those in the 6 months that he has been provided with in the first instance to look at the matter of tackling crime. Because, of course, the implications are real from an economic perspective as well, that albeit it would appear that we're not seeing a lot of crimes directed towards, say, visitors, or we're not seeing um, well, we're still, of course, seeing break-ins, house break-ins, and whatnot, but we actually, to some degree, are seeing reductions in some of these types of crimes as well. So we're seeing some interesting trends, but the implications in terms of the island's reputation and what that could potentially do for investor confidence is undoubtedly something that we have to be looking at with certainly a degree of concern, and of course the impact, as we mentioned earlier, on the cost of healthcare in this regard is also pretty important. We'll have to take some more time, I suppose, maybe tomorrow to try to get through the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank's big push, as it's being touted. Of course, they provided quite a lot of information and data regarding the state of the economy, where things are at, as well as the country's finances, in terms of taxation. That's always been a very topical matter. It appears that some political guns have been pointed at the governor of the central bank as a result of statements he made, perhaps just even last year, I think it was, regarding the matter of VAT, the value added tax. And of course, he at the time was, in fact, pointing out that St. Lucia had the lowest VAT in the Caribbean, in the Eastern Caribbean, certainly, and as well in, I think, across the board in the Caribbean. But of course, a lot more analysis, and he did point out that some of the areas where you have very low VATs are the specialized areas like tourism. I think in the case of St. Lucia, that rate being as low as, what is it, 7% now? Compared to the standard rate of 12.5%. So where the tweaking is done, where adjustments are done, certainly, no doubt, will be where there will be some debate on the fiscal policy in that regard. But we will have to have that conversation, as I mentioned, tomorrow as we continue with the week. So if you are out at cricket tonight, please be safe on the road and do have yourself a very good time. I'm your host, Alex George Jr., saying goodbye.